Hey guys, my name is Mannequin and welcome back to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro. Okay, first of all, sorry that this video is later in the day than I usually post. I had stuff that I needed to get sorted out, but I have two bits of good news. Despite the fact that today's video is late. So I'll kind of make up for that. So the first bit of good news is I've got live streams working. So they're working. I still need to work out some of the kinks and stuff, and so I can make the live stream look really nice. But other than that, I am actually, I have live streams up and running, and that's working out. So I do want to mention one thing though. I do not have live streams scheduled, and I cannot start scheduling them until I actually start doing my school stuff, and I get used to my schedule, and I know when I have times available to consistently stream, so that I could kind of schedule it for you guys and you get into that. But for now, if you are interested in catching some of my streams, I'm going to do a couple more test streams, just like make sure everything's all synced up and working, and making some improvements and stuff like that. And so I'm going to do a couple more test streams, but it's going to have some good information in them. I'm not going to record them because they are test streams, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity for you guys to hop in and kind of ask me questions on any topic at all. And then, you know, I'll probably just have something open that I'll just work on during the duration. So I'll kind of work on that, and you could ask questions related to that, or you could just ask me whatever question you want about any particular topic. So, in order to know when I'm going to be live streaming, I'm going to do it on Twitter. I'm going to send out tweets a couple hours before I start streaming. So you can catch me at twitter.com/mannequin, and you can follow me there. No, I don't have Keycaster running, but I don't really need it for this this series here. So so bear with me. And but I said there were two things. So the first thing was that I got a live streaming set up. The second thing is that I'm doing a mastering series here, but I don't really have any tracks to master. So that's where you guys come in. This is a great opportunity for the months of August and September of 2015. If you send me a track of yours, then I will actually consider just send it to me through SoundCloud, and I'll get back to you and tell you if I'd like to use it in my mastering EDM series. So I could actually, you know, go through and do a master of your track. Because what I'd like to do here, sorry about that clip there. What I'd like to do here is I'd actually like to cover the various topics of mastering, and then do 2 or 3 full masters and record that, so I can kind of show you guys. Because mastering is a fast process. If you're just doing the type of mastering I do, which is not like really real professional mastering, it's just something that'll bring up the loudness of your track, and it'll kind of help the dynamics, sorry about that, so they're a little bit better than if you would have just normalized it, or you would have just slapped a single limiter on. So so that's that. And so, like I said, just send me a message through SoundCloud with a link to your track, and I'll get back to you if I'd like to use it. And just trust me, it doesn't take much to for me to, you know, want to use your track. I just kind of want something that's kind of that's your best effort. I don't want something that's like a half done track. I would like a full track, a full original track. Please no remixes, just because I'd rather do original tracks. But if you guys have an original track you'd like me to master, just send it to me, and as long as I check it out and it sounds like you really tried your best on the track, then I'll probably run it and do a full master of it. Now, that said, I am going to do a couple more episodes talking about these sort of things, but if people send me stuff, then I will actually use those episodes to kind of cover the next topics that I'm talking about. Like when I get into mastering with EQ, and when I get into all the limiters and stuff like that, I am going to actually still use your guys' tracks if you guys send them to me. So this is really a great opportunity for you to get, first of all, a free master, and second of all, someone to listen to your track, and third of all, get your name out there, because I'm not just going to play your track back. I am going to say who you are and what the track's name is. So so you actually, it is a great opportunity for you guys, and don't think, oh, he's going to be getting hundreds of submissions. And then you just kind of like, he's not going to listen to mine, or he's not going to want mine. Just submit it. Trust me, man. I do not get that many submissions whenever I ask for things like this. So trust me, I'm not going to get a lot of stuff. And if I do get a lot of stuff, I will mention it, and I might actually end up doing a master for everyone, even if it's not on camera. Just because, like I said, mastering for me is I do it in a rather quick way, so it's not that big of a deal for me. And also, like I said, my criteria for getting your track mastered is that it has to be a full original track, and that I want to be able to listen to it and hear that it sounds like it's your best effort. So that's pretty much all I have by way of announcements, and without further ado, let's get into multiband compression. Oh my goodness, I need to just turn this down. Okay, so what we have going on with multiband compression is I actually did, I should mention, I did two things to this project in between. First of all, I added this effect here just because it'll really emphasize the point of using multiband compression. Second of all, I took all the things off of this track and moved it up to the master track. Now, whether you work on the master track or you work on the original track doesn't really matter if you have only this one. But since I have two tracks now, which you usually should not do in mastering, I had to move this all over here. So we kind of heard this before, and we are doing some things. We had a compressor going, and I want to show you guys the importance of this. First of all, I'm going to mute this effect. I'm going to play this region back, just right from here to here. Take a listen. So what happens there is you get this original sound, and then it just instantly jumps into the hat loop. So and that's fine. The compressor isn't doing anything wonky. It's just kind of playing back. You kind of see it's doing a little bit of compression, and then when the hats come in, it does a little bit more. But the sound doesn't like change drastically between the area. Now what happens if I add a downlifter here? I'm going to expand this region a little bit so we could hear it a little better. And then we're going to actually, you'll really see a huge difference here. Let me play it back. So I don't know if you can tell there. What happens is this kind of fades in. I'll turn this up to kind of show you better. Do you hear how it kind of fades out and then fades back in? That's because we have a compressor here that's only one band. So across this entire frequency spectrum here, I'm actually going to turn on the analyzer. We'll set it to high resolution and then just set the decay with a really high, really fast decay, so it kind of looks nice and jumpy. But if you kind of watch here, there's a huge boost that happens right there. So what happens is this low end triggers the compressor, and you can watch it really get squished down. And instead of being like this and then going up to around here, watch it. It shoots all the way to there and then goes back up. So this huge low end dump into our track basically just makes the compressor completely like start compressing everything quite a bit, and it really hurts the sound of the song because it sounds like everything fades out and then fades back in, trying to kind of get out of the way of the impact here. So why do we use multiband compression? We use multiband compression for a number of reasons, but this is the most prominent one in EDM, and that is to mitigate this effect. So if we get a multiband compressor here, I'm actually going to pull up this one. It's not as good as Logic's built-in one. This is actually an Apple one, but it's very intuitive when you look at it and makes a lot more sense than their built-in one. So this is the AU multiband compressor here. You can check that out. And what we have here is just kind of if you watch the different sections here, you can see each band as we highlight it. Each one has a different amount of compression. And if you listen now, it doesn't fade as much. Actually, I'm just gonna kind of even out these a bit more. No, you don't necessarily have to even them out. In fact, you should listen artistically how you should even them out. But essentially, so what we have here is each one of these is its own compressor. You kind of see each one's compressing a different amount. We kind of bounce between them, and then we're gonna play this back, just kind of figure out where to start doing this. We're gonna just make this compress like that. Now when I turn this off, actually let me shrink this down. I'll let it hang out though so you kind of hear the tail. But if you watch, I'll turn this off. And then it fades in. Now with it on, it doesn't fade in. So that's why we use multiband compression. That's one of the reasons why. And this is the biggest reason that you need to keep an eye out for. I don't use a lot of multiband compression when I'm doing mastering, but trust me, it will save you in cases of impacts and stuff, because it really lets you have control over the dynamics of each region for artistic reasons, but also it lets you kind of rein in those sounds that are really loud. You just can't deal with it. Now, the reason I don't like using this is because if you watch this, first of all, we go down to details here. I believe the attack time is consistent across every band, so you cannot adjust the attack and release time per each of these. And additionally, this does not have a ratio. It just has like headroom. Not sure what that means, but it kind of looks like a ratio. So if you look here, you can't actually pull this up to a 1-to-1 ratio so that you're not doing any compression. So that's kind of a bad thing. I just chose this one because it really lets you see really simply how much compression are you doing per section, and how much is your ratio for each one. So it's a great thing to see. But you probably should use Logic's built-in multipressor, or this is even better, using an external multiband compressor. Because if you find a good external multiband compressor, it would be so much better than Logic's, because Logic's is kind of weird. And I'll tell you why right now. So the thing about Logic's multiband compressor here is you kind of get it here. You kind of tell. It tells you how much compression it's doing here, how much is pulling down the volume. You kind of see that. Each one of these are twitching around a little. And that one kind of really goes down. And this really just shows you, actually, if you listen, if you just turn on this compressor and leave it at the default settings, it really takes care of that swell. Not as much as it could, but it does a pretty good job. So, but anyway, you can kind of just tell slapping that on there, just having a little bit of compression across different bands kind of helps smooth things out a little bit better. So, so that's kind of, just something to keep in mind. But anyway, this is the weird thing about it. So, this has attack and release, which are kind of obvious. You've used a compressor, you know what attack and release are. And if you don't, then you haven't watched the previous video. Because I talked about attack and release in that one. And then we have the, this is the expander, which we're actually not going to use because I do not like to use an expander during the multiband compression phase. You can, it's up to you. You can try it out. That'll do interesting things to your sound. I do not know if it's very often used. Just because, like I said, I'm not a mastering engineer and I don't do multiband compression all that often. So, so I can't really speak that much about the expansion, which is basically, it's kind of like a limiter. But anyway, suffice it to say that I don't think this is used all that much, and I've never used it, and you probably don't need to worry about it that much. But you can use it if you want to try it out. Just kind of experiment around, see how good it sounds. That's up to you. So anyway, we have attack, release. Here's the threshold right here. You kind of see it moves this piece right here. We can kind of watch these bring down the threshold. And then we have the ratio here, which is kind of obvious, like we've seen in the other compressors. We have the ratio right here. And all that does is it affects the amount of compression we're doing. So, so what's the weird thing? The weird thing is this peak/RMS. Now, you have to be careful with this because you'll think you're doing peak compression, but you don't realize you're actually not. So what this is actually a very, I don't know how it functions, but I know that if you set this to 0, if I could do that here, then it goes down to peak compression. However, as you elongate this, it's kind of like increasing the attack and release at the same time. So, so it does kind of like, it's like, it's instead of having, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Instead of having this button here where you could do peak or RMS, this one has peak, RMS, and some values in between for mix and match. So just keep that in mind. If you want something punchy, like in your high end, you probably want to set this to peak compression, and then you adjust the attack and release to your liking. And then, from there, it's just kind of like a matter of getting these and moving around. So you also got to be careful because this one does have an auto gain, and this, I don't know if this is multi-band auto gain, but it will, if you have that on, it can really do interesting things that you weren't expecting. So be careful with that. You can use it and it can be something good. Just don't turn it on and expect everything to work better. It's just something you have to kind of know what you're doing. Okay. At this point I've kind of covered the first reason that you really want to use it, which is this sort of effect. The second reason is getting a good balance between your dynamics. So if you could solo each of these. So I could do that here, and I could just solo this here and play it back. We kind of hear what we're compressing. Let me mute myself. So for this track, I probably put it right around here because I don't want to compress this with too much of this sound. There we go, that's a good balance. Because this has most of the mids here. Low mids, and then we have the low with not much of the mids. And then we have the, last but not least, we have the high mids. Right about there. And then we have this one, which is just the highs. So that makes things really easy. Now, just because I did this doesn't mean this is the right way to do this. I actually chose this based on the track. So that doesn't mean that every single time you open a track, you're going to set the crossover to 120, 580, and to 28 kilohertz. Or actually, that'd be 2800 hertz, but 2.8 kilohertz. So that these are not always the right value. It's just I listened to the track. I kind of felt, where should I put the transitions based on what's in the track right now, how the track just generally sounds. Where should I generally set these areas to, so I could kind of have control over it. And then you could go in and do each individual things. You kind of go here and just kind of listen, start compressing the high end a little. Turn up the ratio a little bit, so to about a little bit under 4. And then we'll open up the attack. Probably to around, I'm guessing somewhere around 20 milliseconds. Just let it do some compression there. Not too much. Just enough so we can kind of give it flavor. You got to make sure, first of all, okay, here's a general rule about compression that I don't remember if I covered it in my last video, which was horn compression, but general rule of thumb. You should always have points in your track that are regularly often, that are rather often, that the compressor returns to 0 and it's not doing compression. Because if it is always compressing, that's a bad thing, and you're compressing too much. Then you're kind of going more for limiting. So you should always have points in your track that it returns to 0. So you kind of got to keep that in mind. And that's kind of what I'm doing here by judging how much compression I'm doing here. I'm just kind of doing it so it's doing some good compression, but it's returning to 0 very often. Now, the high end, you want to be worried about this more so than low end. Low end, you could actually dial it in so that it kind of, it returns to 0 for like a split second. Kind of more like that. But anyway, so now that we've got the compression, and you can kind of tell, since we're compressing it, we're kind of pulling down the volume a little bit. So we could actually go in and start balancing up the volume by adding gain here. And the cool thing is about this, you kind of see, it actually, when you pull it up, it kind of shows you where it's starting at and how much the compression brings it down to. Which is a great tool, because if you line this up, you kind of see that's about, because it keeps on going down to this line or slightly below it, that's about where it was. If we were to bypass this, that's about where it would stay. So it's kind of like bouncing up around there now. We just add a little bit of punchiness or something like that. So now don't take this as all being done entirely correctly. I am going by head knowledge, not by sound, because first of all, I am not using my monitor, so I cannot hear the high end as well as I could on my monitors. And the high end is the hardest part to work with on headphones when you're mastering. So first of all, this is a very bad example of something to follow by way of the sound that you're hearing right now. I'm just kind of teaching you the theory behind doing this. So kind of, the attack I was going for, I'd actually should probably turn down the release a little bit. and then the ratio and the amount, the threshold, just kind of how much compression I'm doing. I just kind of wanted to judge that based on what I'm seeing on these meters and kind of what I know in my head. Like I said, it's harder on headphones, and I'm also not a very good mastering engineer. So I can't help you too much in that regard by way of what to listen for when you're doing these various things. So you kind of just follow it down the line, and just kind of, if you want to, hear what's going on, you kind of solo it and then bypass. So what actually a great way to listen to this would be if I go to this section here and I play it back. Am I liking that sound? Now you could probably tell, I could just barely hear it, but it kind of makes the high end of a little bit more of a sort of clicky sound to it. So it's very subtle. Let me actually turn down my microphone so you could hear it in more detail. So when I turn it off, it sounds more airy, and when I turn it on, it sounds more clicky. So it's kind of, stylistic. What do you want? And then you just kind of follow likewise in the various sections here. We'd go through and we kind of work with this one. What do we want in this region here? I want this to have quite a bit of compression, actually. So I want to turn down. You'll notice that's not doing a lot of compression. That's because we're on RMS. Turn it down to peak. It's instantly doing much tighter compression. And I want to turn up the ratio on this quite a bit. And if you listen now, we're doing a lot of compression. It's very, very, very tight. That's actually really tight. I don't know. Actually, we have to pull it out and kind of see how that sounds. So you'll notice that really reduced the mids as well. So we want to pull that up. Now that sounds really tight. I actually really like how that sounds. So you could really tell here with the multi-band compression, you have a lot more control over the various tones of your track and compressing those to your liking. Whereas this one is just kind of like, it's to mesh the whole track together. This one is to get each area to stand out. It's kind of like you're mixing a final track almost. So you're getting each area to stand out and be dynamic in the right way. Now, I would cover compression for the very low end because I know you guys would love me to do that. But all I can tell you here is I like stuff to be punchy. And to this day, I do not know how to really work with the low end here. I mean, I could go in and try something here, but I don't know how good it'll sound. Now, what I'd like to do with this one is kind of turn it down so it's almost peak compression. And then I'm going to turn down the ratio so that it's a very soft ratio. Actually, you know what? It was kind of good at there. So it's just barely hitting the top there. And you can tell it's kind of going back, but just barely. I believe. And we'll just pull it up just a little bit. Okay, so that's probably about right. Yeah, somewhere around there. Okay, so that gets a lot of the rumbliness kind of goes away. If you could hear this, hopefully it kind of gets processed correctly and it doesn't get lost when I render the video out. But if you could hear this. That makes it a lot, it makes it so it feels like it has a lot more impact. So you kind of, the bass is kind of like flat and sitting underneath everything right now. But when I turn off the bypass on this, it feels a lot more like it's kind of like tight and sitting there. Now I'm going to be honest, after this session of showing you guys, I'm going to be doing a lot more multiband compression in my masters because I didn't use this tool for a long time because I was afraid of it. And since I've gotten used to regular compression so much and I've gotten used to EQing stuff, this is kind of like compression and EQ in one. So so now I'm a lot more used to those tools. I actually going into this multiband compression, it's actually making a lot more sense to me and it's working a lot better. So now I could just go in and just really quick, I'll do this one. This one I'm going to do very, very, very high amounts of compression because this is the punch of the kick and the bass line, and I want that to sound really stinking tight. First I need to set it to peak though. Now, if I open up this attack here, it'll kind of let the body of the kick through a little bit more. There we go. That's probably about good. So then if I turn this off here, you could really hear the difference there if I go into this region. You just take a listen here. When I turn this off, it sounds all sluggish and flat. But when I turn this back on, it really brings out some of the punch and then also makes it makes it have a lot more character to it. So multiband compression is an extremely powerful tool, and I am so glad that I can actually do something with it now. But I remember reading an article, and part of the reason that I shied away from this was because the article scared me a little. It said one of the things that it said was multiband compression is a great way to make your track really shine, or it's a great way to kill your track. So if you have no idea what you're doing, then my suggestion is only use multiband compression if you're doing like trying to get rid of something like this. Just so you kind of get rid of those peaks and you can kind of balance it out and get rid of those huge parts where something explosive comes in. But if you want to really try to practice and get into multiband compression and really try to get it so you could have this nice shine on your track, then from what I've said, this is literally the first time I've done multiband compression on a master in quite a while. So it is a great tool, and you could really, really do a lot of awesome stuff with it characteristically. Now, this is a bad example right now of the balance between these different regions, like the high end, mids, and lows. I do not have it balanced correctly. If you listen, you can kind of tell. It definitely needs a lot more mids. But I'm not too worried about that because we're going to talk a lot more about this in the EQ phase and the importance of that. But for now, this is actually pretty darn good compared to what we had before. Now, for the sake of trying to keep things at the same level, I'm just going to check the peak levels of this. That's 9.9. That's 12. So I'm going to pull this down, try to make them the same level. 11. Negative 12. There we go. So this is about the same level, and we'll do an A-B here, and you can really tell. So what I'm trying to do here is you could actually notice between the A, B, that the kick has a lot more punch in the original. But the high end is kind of tired. So this is kind of what I was talking about by it's really easy to kill it and really easy to make it better. So you got to be very careful because like I said, I kind of flattened out my kick. But at the louder level, it was sounding fine. But when I pulled it down A beat at the same level, you could really tell that the compression kind of did a little bit to kill it. So you got to be careful and you got to make sure that everything's balanced out fine. And you're not doing too much compression. I think part of the reason here is my attack here is really fast on the low end, and that's a bad thing. I probably should have this more around here and have the release kind of hang out a little bit more too. So then we want to pull up the threshold too. Oh, this is at a lower volume level actually. It's at negative 13 now. Yeah, I probably need to just compress the sub by itself. I don't know. Anyway, so you kind of get the idea that multiband compression is pretty hard, but at the same time, it's got, if you could do it right, you could really do good things to your sound. So like I said, my suggestion is just be careful with it and remember that less is more. If you could do a very subtle amount of styling with this and do it right, then it's so much better than doing a lot of styling and doing it kind of, okay. So it's something that you want to be kind of, wary about doing boosts too much or compression too much all over the place. And mastering, that is kind of like how things work out. You do want to do a lot less with mastering, and it's kind of more of a case of bringing things up and pushing it to the limit without making it sound really different. So you want to kind of keep the original sound and stay true to that sound, but at the same time, you want to try to improve things. So you got to kind of keep that in mind when you're going through and you're just setting all these settings. Just remember that you don't have to do that much compression. You could just do a tiny amount just to add like a little bit of flavor to it. So that's pretty much it that I could cover on multiband compression. I do not have any other multiband compressors that I would like to use. Now, when we get into using limiter 6, which will probably be in the following videos where I'm going to talk about limiters, they actually have compressors that automatically do multiband compression inside of them, and they have limiters that are multiband limiters inside of them. But at the same time, they're not really flexible in the way that you could actually change each section and kind of like adjust all the various settings. It's just kind of like one setting set that and then each section is kind of controlled separately. So it's controlled separately inside the software, but you only have basically you have one of these and it splits up the area into 4 different regions and kind of just monitors each one individually. So anyway, so the next videos I'm going to talk about limiters, and I might be able to cover them all in one video. I might not, because there's 2 very different types of limiting. And then I'll probably cover, I might cover distortion and then EQ, or I might do it the other way around. We'll see. Just kind of depends how things work out and how much, how long it takes to talk about limiting. So that's the whole deal with multiband compression. You got to be very careful with it. And as I kind of showed you, I had it kind of good, and then I started boosting things and doing too much. I got kind of cocky and I started doing stuff in this area where I really shouldn't have. I was doing some good stuff right around here. Like I really made this tighter, and the high end kind of gave it a little bit more click in the high end. But then I got cocky and went to the areas that I knew I usually wasn't able to do very good on, and then I kind of ended up. I did some good things to them, but then it kind of in terms of the track, it kind of flattened it. Which the biggest thing that I did wrong was that I went and I did it all on solo first, and then I unsoloed it. You kind of tell is not a very good idea. So Yeah, part of the reason is too the kick in here really shines by itself because it's got a pitch to it that when it pitches down it sounds really nice. So you kind of got to be careful because if you try to split up the regions here, actually if you watch the spectrum analyzer, you kind of see how it slides down. If you try to split it up here and here, you kind of lose some of that when you compress it differently. So that's a little bit of thing you got to be careful for in that regard. But anyway, you kind of gotta. You gotta choose what you want to do for each track. So just because this track the kick doesn't separate well doesn't mean that in a dubstep or electro house track it won't. So it's kind of up to you. And like I said, this one's a very stylistic tool unless you're just using it to get rid of this issue about that whole thing. You can actually tell right there that this actually really fixed it. If you listen, I'm gonna mute, turn off the multiband compression, and we'll listen here. And then fades in, and then if I turn this on, it seems like a lot less of a fade in. There is still a fade in, but that's because this is so stinking loud. Normally it wouldn't be that loud anyway. It'd kind of be like, let's see here. It'd be more around that volume level. That's more realistic, but I kind of wanted to pull it up to really show you, you know, what you'll hear when you actually have a loud impact. And it kind of just gets that sort of fade in sort of sound. So anyway, I hope this video is really helpful for you guys, and I hope, like I said, I'm not very good with multiband compression. I did do some good stuff right around here, but in the low end I wasn't so good just because when it comes to multiband compression, I'm not 100% sure how to work with the low end. So I'm not the best guy for that. And I don't know, maybe you would do some RMS compression on the low end instead of peak compression. That could be it. And I could just be doing stuff wrong in that regard. But then again, you could at the same time bypass these guys and then just work with these two. So you kind of see there, you could just work in the high end instead of using those additionally. So it's all up to you how you use the tool. But I kind of apologize how this episode was a little bit, you know, it's a little bit, it kind of sounds like I don't really know what I'm doing. And that's kind of because that's the truth. I do know a little bit about using multiband compression, but in practice, I don't use it very often. So I haven't got a lot of practice with it. And at the same time, I don't really, I know how each setting works, but I don't know how to use it as artistically as I know how to use a regular compressor or an EQ or something like that. So yeah, it's all up to how you use it, and just experiment around and practice. And like I said, if you use this often, you will get better at it. It took me forever to get reasonable at mastering, and now I actually can do a pretty good master, whereas before I was really just kind of squashing my tracks and making them sound kind of weird. They were louder, but they also had a really weird tone to them, and I couldn't like choose a tone. It just kind of ended up however it ended up. But now I've gotten to the point where generally when I master, it's pretty good. So you just kind of, it's all up to how you end up using the tool. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.